guys, my name is Amish Tripathi and I'm the director of the Nehru Center. The Nehru Center is the cultural wing of the Indian High Commission in the UK, and we've been in existence for many decades, and we organize wonderful events at this very auditorium, which is in Mayfair in central London. Sadly, as you can see, the auditorium is empty. It has been empty since we were all put into lockdown due to the coronavirus pandemic. But what we Indians believe is that the other side of a crisis is an opportunity. And what we have done at the Nehru Center is moved all our events online. So now if you attend our online events, every single seat is a VIP seat. Like you get a front row at our events. No trouble of parking, no trouble of traveling all the way. And most practically all the programs that we would do, like literary discussions and dance performances, musical performances, we are doing them all on our online channels. You can register for our newsletter at our website nehrucenter.org.uk. You don't need to write them down, they will be displayed at the bottom of the screen. You can also come to our Facebook page, which is a verified page, the Nehru Center. You can follow updates on all our events on Twitter as well, the Nehru Center, that's also a verified account. Or you can come to our YouTube channel, again, the Nehru Center. We are nothing if not consistent. I hope you do come to our online channels and enjoy the events that we are putting up for you. Thank you so much for all your love and support. Namaste, Jai Hind.
Namaste. Thank you so much for joining us on the Nehru Center platform once again. And the Nehru Center, the platform that we have, we discuss everything, every aspect of India, anything that catches the fancy of you, our audience. So we discuss cultural issues, historical issues, economic issues, and we thought this would be a wonderful time to discuss a subject that has been extremely topical over the last few weeks, which is the subject of India's farming reforms. This is a subject where, not just in India, but even in the UK, you have pretty passionate points of view. Some who oppose it, some who support it, but there's also a debate that has more heat than light. And if the aim is to shed light on this very, very important debate in today's day, one can't do better than the guest we are bringing in front of you today. This is India's foremost agricultural economist, Professor Ashok Gulati. If he could be brought up on stage, please.
Thank you.
Professor Gulati, namaste. Absolute honor to have you on board here, sir. And since we are a Sarkari organization, I will do the official introduction first, and then we'll jump into our conversation. Okay. Professor Gulati is the Infosys Chair Professor for Agriculture at ICRIER since March 2014. He is currently also on the Central Board of Directors of the Reserve Bank of India, National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, and the National Commodities and Derivatives Exchanges. He was Chairman of the Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices, Government of India, 2011 to 2014, Director, Markets, Trade and Institutions, and later in Asia at the International Food Policy Research Institute, NABARD Chair Professor at the Institute of Economic Growth, and Director plus Chief Economist at Agriculture and Rural Development at the National Council for Applied Economic Research from 91 to 97. Dr. Gulati has been deeply involved in policy analysis and advice in India. He was the youngest member of the Economic Advisory Council of Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, member of the Economic Advisory Council of the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, member of the State Planning Board of Karnataka, member of the Economic Transformation Council of the Chief Minister of Rajasthan. As you can clearly see, he worked across all political parties across the aisle. He served India rather than any particular political party. For all his contributions to the field, the President of India honored him with the Padma Shri, one of India's highest civilian awards, in 2015. Dr. Gulati has 14 books to his credit, far more than I've written till now. Besides numerous research papers in national and international journals, he did his MA and PhD from the Delhi School of Economics. Dr. Gulati, this is a CV that is awe-inspiring and scary in terms of the specialization and your scholarship on this very particular subject.
Very kind introduction. I was looking for a place to hide. Your books are much more interesting with a wider audience than I can ever be in terms of a specialist writing on agriculture.
You're too kind. The impact that you have on the country is far, far superior than, in fact, all of us at the Nehru Center and the mission combined. So let's just jump straight into the debate. As I mentioned in my introductory remarks, this debate, especially in the UK, has more heat than light. So we can start off from the basics. If you can just take us through and our audience through, in very simple terms, what essentially are the reforms that have been rolled out over the last few weeks with these laws?
Well, there are three laws that have been put into place. The first one, which is called the Farmers Produce Trading and Commerce Act, which basically says that farmers are free to sell their produce to anybody. At present, they are supposed to be going to something called APMC mandis, the markets that are designated for agricultural commodities. And there is a history behind that. But now they are given the freedom that if you want to sell to anyone outside those mandis, then they are permitted to do so. The second one relates to a sort of a contract farming, but the name of that is a little different. It's called, the Farmers Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Services. That is, if you are entering into any contract with a corporate or any big buyer, then some price is assured to you before you even sow your crop. So that is put in writing so that instead of looking at last year's prices, you know what is the price that you're likely to get after harvest. So you enter into a sort of a contract with anybody that you want to, or for any services. The third act relates to an amendment actually of the Essential Commodities Act of 1955, under which the state had the authority to put any restrictions on movement of goods, agriculture goods from one state to another, or put stocking limits on the private trade at the drop of a hat, that whatever you are stocking, put it in the market within 1 week or 3 days, otherwise you can be put behind the prison. So that type of law was in existence. Now this has brought some rationality that if the prices go up by 50% compared to the last 3 years or 5 years, I'm averaging, and only then you can put stocking limits for non-perishable, and for perishable commodities, the spike in prices has to be 100%. Only then you can put stocking limit. So some sort of a liberating the private sector to hold stocks with a view that you please come forward and start investing in storage capacity in the country. Because at present there is a lot of shortage of storage capacity, and about 90,000 crores of rupees worth of agriculture produce is lost because of lack of storage facilities. So these are the three basic laws.
But Dr. Gulati, I mean, I hope you don't mind if I push a bit on this, but there is a concern. One has heard this, from those who speak for the farmers right here in the UK as well, that this would give control to corporates. Can they really stand up to the corporates? Isn't it better if the government manages it? What would be your answer to that? I know you don't speak for the government, but just as a
few basic facts for me. I'm not to change anyone's opinion or whatever they think. For me, good thing is that I can put the facts before the people and let them decide what is good and what is bad. First basic fact is 90% of agricultural produce, more than that, actually is sold to the private sector. right?
Already?
Less than 10% already. 90% of the agriculture produced plus, right? Only there was a survey of the National Sample Survey Organization called the Situation Assessment Survey of the Farmers. And it came out that only 6% of Indian farmers have sold their produce at minimum support price to the government. Only 6%, right?
Okay.
Now, after that, there is some increase in procurement here or there. I would still put the figure to be less than 10%, around 10%. Now, you look at, let us say, the fastest growing sector in India, in agriculture, within agriculture, which is growing at about 8% per annum. That's the poultry sector.
Right.
And poultry sector is 100% driven by the private sector. There are big hatcheries which are tying up with farmers. Farmers start with 500 birds, then go to 1,000 birds, then 5,000 birds, then 25,000 birds. So farmers also scale up, and there is actually a contract between the two parties. And so far, that's the fastest growing sector within agriculture. You look at milk sector, and the value of milk actually is more than the value of wheat, rice, and sugarcane combined. Wheat is our biggest agricultural commodity. Today, India is producing 187 million tons of milk, number one in the world. Second number goes to US, which is producing around 100 million tons. So see the gap between 187 million tons and 100 million tons. And remember, in 1951, US was producing 53 million tons and we were producing only 17, one third of what US was producing. Today we are almost, close to double of that, 80% higher, 87% higher. So milk, you have different players. Even within Punjab, you have Nestle, which is a multinational. In the south, you have Hudson, which is buying milk from small farmers with 2 cows, 4 cows, 3.5 lakh farmers. Every day they are buying milk from the smallholders. Actually, this is the biggest revolution India has shown and given to the world, that what smallholders can do. Milk revolution is a miracle. And I would love to say that this is a big lesson for a continent like Africa, which is still struggling to get their green revolution. But the green revolution is more difficult for them as they don't have much water, as we were blessed with irrigation facilities in Punjab and Haryana and Western UP. But milk revolution and poultry revolution in even Africa has to learn from India what wonders smallholders can do. So they are all doing business with the corporates. Remember, don't pitch them one against the other. These farm and factories, these two are two sides of the same coin. They have to work together.
No, but Dr. Gulati, if I can just, we will come to the green revolution and how that was the root of many positives and some of the things. We'll come to that later. But if I can just push you a bit more on this, one can't deny that there is a mismatch in power equations.
Sure.
And if there is a contract, and for whatever reasons, this is farming, things go wrong, weather, so many things can happen. What are the risks that a farmer carries against a massive corporate? You're saying multinational corporates are already doing this. They don't know how to fight they don't know how to use the legal system. They are weaker negotiation wise.
There is no legal contract in that sense. It's all because these corporates have to work with the farmers, and they have a vision of laying down the foundation for 30 years work together. I give you another example. Today India has the largest tractor industry in the world, right? Mahindras alone control 40% of the market share. And if you take Tafe, Sonalika, Escorts, and John Deere, these 5 players control 80 to 85% of the tractor industry. Now think about, I think every family in Punjab has a tractor, right? Gone are the days of bullocks plowing the fields with the bullocks. Mere desh ki dharti sona ho bole. That Mother India picture that we saw. which was shot in Haryana, perhaps on that front.
One of my favorite actors, Manoj Kumar.
Yes. So, the question is that now I would salute Mahindras to have done such a great contribution to the farming community by replacing the bullock power with the tractor power. It has made the lives much easier, has turned around. You can grow easily 2 crops, 3 crops. So it's how you view it. Are they exploiting the farmers? There is a competition going on, and they know they have to work with these very farmers. It's a market system that operates. And I consider Nestle's or ITCs or Mahindras or Tatas or even Hudsons of this world doing a great service to the farming community. And I don't feel that there is an exploitation now. If there is an unequal bargaining power and they try to exploit, there are institutions available. Competition Commission of India can intervene and see that if one party is exploiting the other, and if anybody violates the contract, if that is written, then you can go to, in these laws, there is a provision to go to the SDM, and farmers are saying, why can't we go to the civil courts? Government says, okay, fine, go to the civil courts. Only thing is, it will take you months or maybe years to decide, whereas with the SDM, you can settle it within a month. Remember, in developing countries, social capital works much better than any legal contracts will ever work.
I take your point on that, but what happens to the APMCs? And for those among our viewers who don't know, those are the government mandated, government controlled mandis, agricultural product marketing committees. Now, what happens to them? Do they become weaker with this, and therefore does the farmer lose his safety net, so to speak? That's one of the criticisms that's come up.
Yeah, let me come to that. APMC mandis or regulated mandis, where you are supposed to have a transaction registered and there are rules of the game that you have to pay within a week or so to the farmer, and this is the commission that you have to pay to the Artiya, the middleman. This is the mandi fee you have to pay to the state, or any cess that you have to pay. Like in Punjab, it is 8.5% on top of minimum support price.
On gross? On the gross value.
On the gross value of the crop. So you have to pay on that. Now, what happens now? That is not a standardized system. There are states that charge only 1%. There are states that charge 3%, and there are states, the highest is in Punjab, 8.5%. Now, since wheat and rice in Punjab is bought primarily by the Food Corporation of India, that is the central government, through the state agencies, so the central government in a way is paying to the state government, right? Whereas in all others, the amount is much lower. And, that is what, there is a challenge. If people are buying outside the APMC mandis, then they will not be paying commission to the middleman. They may not be paying mandi fee, or they may not be paying any cess, this 8.5%. Then naturally the business will go away from the APMC mandi, and very soon mandis will collapse. Now, I don't think that is the very rational argument, because government's plan of APMC markets is to strengthen them, and they are already linking them through something called ENAM, Electronic National Agriculture Market, so that creating an all India platform. And hundreds and thousands of markets are being linked together so that farmers can really sell their products on electronic platform. Now that process is on. So the question that APMC markets will be abolished, that's not true. But some business can go out of the APMC if the charges within the APMC mandis are prohibitively high, and 8.5% is a big margin for any processor. In fact, roller flour mills in Punjab try to get wheat from UP rather than from Punjab, because if they have to pay 8.5% on top of minimum support price in the mandis, then their margins are washed away the very first day. So processing cannot go on like that. So, the very fact APMC mandis will stay, this is a fear that has been created, and somehow farmers got this apprehension that they will disappear. They are not going to disappear. So that's for sure. But they will have to compete with the private sector that is buying outside the mandis. That means you have to bring down all these charges and bring some competitiveness in the system. This is like the old Air India Airlines. There was only one monopoly, one airline. And when you open up 4 more airlines, now you are afraid that your airline may collapse because it has higher pricing and lower service, and people may shift to the better ones. So in that entire process, farmers are not going to be the losers. If anybody is going to be under pressure, it will be the middlemen, that is the RTS, and the state revenue. I think the center and the state can sit together and look at how much is the loss in revenue and resolve that. That should not be a very big thing. Every transition can be made more palatable.
But if we go a little, deeper into this and then connect to those, you said 6%, at max 10% who actually benefit from the MSP. 90% of the farmers don't. Now, I'm assuming most of those who benefit from the MSP are in Punjab and Haryana, because the major MSP crops are rice and wheat. Am I correct?
Sure.
So, if you can take me through the historical background to this, because there is a background that, look, these farmers, they helped us at a time when India was staring at famine in the 1960s, pre-Green Revolution. Many of the youngsters may not know that, India survived. We didn't face the kind of disastrous famine that China did because of the charity of the USA. They sent wheat to us under PL 480. And then the Green Revolution, of course, transformed us dramatically. And certainly the farmers of Punjab and Haryana had a major role to play. What was the system of the APMCs in that? And then later we can take on how, for the farmers then, it could be a very major shift. They've been used to that for so many years now, decades now.
Yeah, since you talked about the evolutionary process, in 1964-65, 2 years consecutively, we had severe drought in the country. And there was a drop in production, and country was in a major trouble to feed its population. It did not have the foreign exchange enough to buy wheat from the global markets. In fact, if the entire foreign exchange of the country was used just for one thing, that is the import of wheat, they could have imported only 7 million tons of wheat. So we didn't have the foreign exchange. Then a strategy was devised, and it was debated and discussed in the parliament. C. Subramanian at that time, who was the agriculture minister, he was told that there are high-yielding varieties of seeds available in Mexico, which were developed by an American, Norman Borlaug, Prize for Peace. And if you want, then you can bring those. Now, when it was debated in the parliament, I recall, the left parties vehemently opposed that. They said, oh, these seeds that are coming from outside, they will make us slave forever. Exactly the same thing of big corporations, and America will dominate us, and we will be sold out to US on that front, and so on and so forth. All these big scary fears were created, and people said, particularly from the left parties, that it will not be a green revolution, it will be a red revolution. Now, at that time, India did not have much of a choice. Money was not there in the pocket to buy. US came to help through PL 480, as you said, charity. Well, it was, I shouldn't call it a charity, it was an aid given against the rupee payments.
Yes.
And we imported 10 million tons of wheat, which saved millions of lives. Ship-to-mouth situation.
A separate highlight, the PL 480 rupee account was used to set up various institutions as well. One of which was the IMF. Many people don't know that.
So it was spent within India. Since you mentioned about China during the Great Leap Forward, 58 to 61, lost 30 million lives because of starvation. India was lucky that in the mid-60s, when these seeds were imported, the first seeds, 18,000 tons were imported. This is the biggest ever seed import by any country from Mexico at that time, two varieties, Lerma Rojo and Sonara 64, when they were imported. At that time, in 1965, Government of India created two new institutions. One was called the Agricultural Prices Commission and the other was the Food Corporation of India. They said when we are bringing in the new technology, the new seeds, the production may increase, and whenever the production increases, the prices collapse at the time of harvest. So Agriculture Prices Commission said that we will give you a fairly remunerative price so that farmers can benefit from this, and Food Corporation of India will buy all the surpluses so that prices don't crash. And as a result, the farmers should be able to adopt technology very fast, and we can get away from the PL 480 because it had some political costs attached to it. So that's how in January 1965, Agriculture Prices Commission announced, it came into existence and then announced the minimum support price. The first crop that came in was in 67, and it was like a burst of grain in Punjab. Food Corporation of India was buying and they didn't know where to keep it. The schools had to be closed down in Punjab, and the first godowns were the classrooms of those schools and colleges. That was the situation. And within 4 years, we were able to get away from PL 480 imports, and that gave us, in a way, the freedom on the grain front, food security front. So Punjab farmers played a heroic role during 60s when they lapped up new seeds, the new technology, and then from wheat to rice later on. And tube well explosion took place. Literally, tractors came in, and there was a joke that there are more tractors in Punjab than perhaps dogs in Punjab. So total mechanization that took place in Punjab. So there is no doubt that Punjab, Haryana, and Western UP played a very heroic role in getting the food security to the country. But by mid-80s, the whole scenario had changed. It was in 86, I recall, when the stockpile was there of food grains. And Captain Amrinder Singh in 1985 said, we need to diversify away from wheat and rice cycle. The wise man of Punjab, Professor S.S. Joel, he wrote a report in 1986 where he said the days of wheat and rice now are going and we need to diversify to high value agriculture. Unfortunately, somehow that did not happen, and we are still stuck with rice and wheat. And in June 2020, India had a buffer stock of 97 million tons of wheat and rice with Food Corporation of India against a buffer stock norm of 41.2 million tons.
We have more than 2 times. We have more than 2 times our buffer.
2.5 times. Yes. So it's a huge.
What's the value of this?
The value of it at economic cost to FCI, it is more than 1,80,000 crores. Now you can translate into dollars or
$25 billion.
Yeah.
$25 billion. Why can't we export this then?
Well, our wheat is not exportable because the minimum support price is higher than the international market today. Luckily, rice is exportable. Our rice prices are still below the world prices. But the problem with rice is when it is exported from Punjab, 1 kilogram of rice requires 5,000 liters of water for irrigation. So even if half of it goes back to the groundwater recycle, half of that either evaporates or basically you are exporting water. So we are the largest exporter of rice in the world, about 12 million tons we are exporting. We are literally exporting 25 to 30 billion cubic meters of water from a country that is having scarcity of water. So we need to think about it.
Is this causing environmental problems? One reads of, the water table collapsing, desertification of parts of Punjab. There's a cancer express that runs from, I read of that in my research, from the Malwa region. What does that have to do with? I was told that's linked to rice and wheat.
Yeah, there are a number of things because rice actually is not a crop for Punjab. They adopted it because there were high yielding varieties available and they had seen the miracle in wheat, and they started off that. Rice needs about 25 irrigations compared to only 4 or 5 for wheat. So, five times more water it needs. It becomes a huge lake, when you go and there is a ponding of water. The switch is always on and continuous water flooding of paddy fields. It causes a lot of problems. When you apply urea there, the plant consumes not more than 30% of the urea, the nitrogen content. The rest either goes into the groundwater, pollutes the groundwater with high nitrate content, or goes into the atmosphere and pollutes the atmosphere. Then you put a lot of weedicides and pesticides to spray, which makes the whole thing, more chemically contaminated, and maybe that is what is leading to more of cancer in that belt. But those medical people have to really see what is the cause behind this. There is a spurt in cancer cases, whether it is because of this or many other factors there could be. But the very fact the water table in central Punjab is going down by almost 2 feet a year. When you look at the NASA satellite pictures, you see three spots globally, which are the hot spots where water table is declining very, very fast. One is this Punjab Haryana belt. One is in China and one is in California. These are the three global hotspots, which are. So what you are doing actually is you are robbing away the rights of future generations of Punjab and Haryana. Those people will not have water. There will be massive scarcity of water. So I think we need to devise techniques, but we also need to revise our incentive structures to change human behavior and change the cropping pattern in that area, ensuring that farmers' incomes don't go down, they go up. Otherwise, no incentive can work. So that is a stage we are already late in that. But as they say, better to be late than never. I think this debate today perhaps will ensure a newer package and a new direction for Punjab Haryana farmers.
But just to push a bit on this, is it fair to say that rice is the only reason for the collapse of the water table in Punjab Haryana, or could there be other causes as well?
No. Primarily, I think rice is the primary cause of it. It is accentuated by a policy which is somewhat short-sighted, and that is the free power. Farmers get free power in Punjab. They may get at night or whatever, they put the switch on and let the fields get flooded.
They pump water.
I think there are better ways to give money to the farmers. In fact, if they are using, let us say, X amount of water, if that is their entitlement, let us say today, you can say that if you consume less water, you will be given this much of payment. So
straight into their bank account.
Exactly. So if you change the incentive structure, in fact, there is a scheme by the World Bank which they are doing with the government of Punjab, Pani Bachao, Paisa Kamao. That means save water, earn money. So those pilots are going on certain feeders. I think results are reasonably good. And to change human behavior, I want to underscore this fact that farmers' income should not go down.
Yes.
It must go up. Now, what are the factors and what are the policy instruments through which you can support farmers, and which do not disturb your natural resource endowment of water or air? And now this stubble burning is polluting air even up to Delhi. So all these things can be checked and minimized if we change the policy instruments.
Dr. Gulati, one of the comments I just read up on stage while we were talking, I'm sorry, they'll keep posting comments out here.
Sure.
We will take questions from the audience as well. One of the comments mentioned sugar farming in Maharashtra. I live in Mumbai in India. And Does sugar consume a lot of water as well? Because Western Maharashtra farming was one of the success stories of the last few decades. Kolhapur, Ichalkaranji, Satara, these are humongously rich parts of Maharashtra and indeed of India.
Of course, they are rich. There is no doubt about it. And but I'll give you only one fact for you to judge what is good and what is bad in Maharashtra. Maharashtra, the sugarcane area is grown on about 4% of the total gross cropped area. 4 to 4.5%, maximum 5%. So less than 5% of the cropped area is under sugarcane. But it takes away more than 60% of the irrigation water of the state. More
My
than
God.
60% water of the state. Think about it, sugarcane is 100% irrigated, right? And in agriculture, if you have irrigation, that sings the song of prosperity, right? You can grow sugarcane, you can grow rice if you have water. 100% irrigated sugarcane, which is on 4%, 4.5% of the area. Cotton, which is on 18% of the area, is only 3% irrigated. 3% irrigated. So they rely on rainfall. And no wonder that most of the suicides in Maharashtra that take place in the cotton belt.
In
Nothing
Vidarbha,
wrong with
Marathwada.
the cities, Vidarbha, but if the rains fail, they don't have irrigation. Only 3% of cotton area is irrigated versus 100% irrigation for sugarcane. And sugarcane takes away 5 times more water than cotton.
Would
4
you
times
say,
more.
so would you say, sorry to use, I was a corporate guy before I got into writing, so sorry to use a corporate term, but is it a product mix issue in Indian agriculture? Is rice, sugar, and wheat? Is it fair to say that there's a problem here? And
Wheat,
secondly, if
wheat
I
is
may ask,
yeah, go
is it
ahead.
also that agriculture has moved from what was a shortage situation to what is now a surplus situation? So essentially product mix and shortage to surplus. Is it fair to say that this is one of the
Yes,
core structural issues?
yes, sure. In fact, I'm coming out hopefully by next month a book called From Scarcity to Surplus. It compares India, China, and Israel. All the three countries had massive shortages and they have all turned into surpluses. And how it has happened is through technology, good price incentives. But one of the key things when water is free and power is almost free, then you try to over exploit that resource. In the short run it doesn't catches your eye, but when you look over a period of 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, you find, my heavens, if you compare the graphs in Maharashtra and Punjab with a gap of 30 years, you will see what is happening to the water table. It is a very iniquitous route in Maharashtra of the sugarcane growers from a scarce water which is not being priced properly. And I gave you pulses, sorghum, all that share that should have gone to them of water is concentrated with 5%. So this 5% is very, very rich belt of the sugarcane farmers. But all others, whether they are sorghum producers or soybean producers or cotton producers or pulses producers, they're all their incomes are 1/3, 1/2 of the sugarcane farmers.
But how does one? Well, I take your point that there are 90% farmers who are suffering and perhaps maybe
Not suffering. I would not say suffering. Poultry
but they're not
farmers
part of
are,
the MSP system.
yeah.
But the protests, if they're coming from the 10% who are benefiting from the MSP system, which would probably be largely rice, wheat, and sugar, we have to find a way to make it work for those farmers to shift.
Sure.
Force is not a good idea. What is the way forward?
We have to look at when your income goes up, you don't start taking from 4 to 6 chapatis or from one bowl of rice to 2 bowls of rice. What adds on your thali, on your plate, is more of nutritious food, more of milk and milk products, more of meat, more of fruits and vegetables. This is where the demand is growing at 3 times faster than the demand for cereals. So cereals, if you look from 2000 to 1890, 18-year period, cereals are growing at 1.5%. Poultry is growing at 8%. Milk is growing at 4.5%. Pulses are growing around 5%. So you look at these where the demand pressures are going to go, and you need to give signals to the farmers to grow more of those rather than get stuck with wheat and rice, where we have huge surpluses today, and there is a question where to keep them. We don't have literally enough storage capacity in the country. Our storage of the modern type, and this is where these laws liberate the system to invite investments. In the Western world, in Europe and US, you can easily see going, when you are traveling in the rural area, there are silos, right? In India, we are producing 117 million tons of rice and about 106, 107 million tons of wheat. And our silo capacity, the modern storage capacity, is less than 2 million tons. So out of 223 million tons, only 2 million ton is kept in silos. The others are very old, traditional, sheds in which it is kept. They are not modernized, and you still see the typical scene of a FCI worker carrying the bag on his back and putting on a heap of, those bags. We are still continuing the technology in storage, which was largely in 60s and 70s. The world has changed, and I think we need to unleash that investment process by allowing the private sector to come under certain rules of the game. But unless you build supply lines which are modern, more cost effective, efficient, fast moving, the entire logistics chain. So after the post-harvest, these 3 laws actually are to make the post-harvest part of the value chain much more efficient. And farmer used to lose on this. I told you the losses because of, 90,000 crores of agri-produce is lost because there is not enough storage capacity in the country.
So what, rats eat them up or they get spoiled? Or?
In fact, one of the topmost economic journalists, Swami Ankleshwar Iyer, has written that now instead of feeding people, Punjab and Haryana are feeding even rats because there is so much mountain of grain.
But Dr. Gulati, if one hears you, then it's almost like, okay, these reforms are in the long-term interest of the farmers themselves. Then why are these protests there? Is there a thing, like one of the questions I'd seen come up as well, that, I'm not asking you to comment on politics, but that is there a thing that the government has not consulted enough on this, or is it that there is not enough flexibility, being too stubborn? What would you say to that?
The current agitation, I think, is because of the lot of fear that has been created and apprehension that farmers have that if private sector is allowed to buy from outside the mandis, these mandis will have no business left. And that gets into the political domain also, which I don't want to touch. But the very fact is there are some genuine fears which the government is trying to communicate and assure them and reassure them that if you want, MSP will stay, APMC mandis will stay. And if you want to create a level playing field, even with the private sector, you want to impose similar taxation or similar fees which you have in the APMC mandis, you can do that. All those things are there. Now, on your question, then, is there a communication failure or what is happening, trust deficit perhaps?
Or that there was no consultation earlier, that these laws were just...
That's yes and no. Consultation, the first model act on marketing reforms came in 2003 when Mr. Vajpayee, and I had the privilege and honor to work in his advisory council at that time. 2003, the first model act was circulated among states that this is the time to change the marketing structure of agricultural produce. It was then 2007 and then again 2014 and even 2012-13. Congress said that. Then
so during the
15
NDA era and during the UPA era, you're saying these.
Oh, of course, it is all the governments have promised these reforms, whether it was UPA or whether it was NDA. Both the major parties have promised these reforms at one time or the other. The most prominent farmer leader of the last 30 years, I would say, Mr. Sharad Joshi, who hailed from Maharashtra. You would remember how he used to protest all the Shetkari Sangatna. He had only one slogan. He said, we don't need any subsidies from the government. Just free us up. Because at that time, there were times when there was a levy on the rice mills. Farmers or anybody else could not take the produce outside the state. States were bottled up so that the prices drop and the government can procure and only government can take it to the deficit states. So that was the situation.
Farmers could sell interstate. They couldn't sell to
No, it was a smuggling. In fact, within not only states, even within the district, in Thanjore district in Tamil Nadu, which was the rice ball, there were times when the law said that nobody can take rice outside Thanjore district. You can't sell it outside. So it was bottled up so that prices come down, government will procure and then government will take it to the deficit states or deficit districts or the same. So these were the sort of draconian measures which during the time of so-called socialism, the state had the commanding heights. And to me, this was in a way taxing farmers by suppressing their prices. So Sharad Joshi said, you get off our backs. The government is the biggest exploiter, which is doing this. And we should be allowed to sell our produce to anyone in India and outside India. So no ban on exports of agriculture produce. He fought 30 years basically for that particular thing. And today, these very laws are actually in that direction. So it's something surprising. How come the farmers who were asking for this are suddenly opposing it? Because today the government is giving a price which is somewhat better than the international prices, like wheat. But rice can still be exported. Both in wheat and in sugar, we have crossed the international price line and you will have surpluses. Even today, government announced, 6 million tons of extra sugar is there in the country. We will give subsidy to export sugar. Now what will happen? Australia, Brazil, Thailand, who are, traditional exporters of sugar, they will take India to WTO. They are already into it. That what is this? You are giving subsidy. You cannot do under the agreement on agriculture in WTO, right? So don't create surpluses of those in which you are not competitive globally and which cannot be consumed even at home. You will be stuck with these surpluses, and that's what the whole game is. From scarcity, we have come to surplus situation in number of commodities, and therefore there is need to change the very agricultural policy right now.
No, very interesting point, because if we have excess sugar, we might not just have fat rats, we might have diabetic rats as well.
Of course, it is causing diabetes. India is called the diabetes capital of the world.
Dr. Gulati, we had some, we're in the UK, so we had some questions that had come in on video questions. If we could put them up to you as well. The first one is from Lord Jitesh Gadia, who's a member of the House of Lords out here in the UK. If his question could be put up, please, we could hear him.
My question for Mr. Gulati is as follows. There are many Western commentators and opinion formers who have supported the right of Indian farmers to continue to receive subsidies. At the same time, Western governments have also filed complaints at the World Trade Organization demanding that the Indian government removes farm subsidies. I would very much welcome your views on this dichotomy. Should Indian farm subsidies continue or not?
Sorry, Dr. Gulati, before you answer, I should clarify. We're a diplomatic organization. We will not name the country which did this. And I should clarify, it was not the UK. We have very good relations with the UK. Dr. Gulati, go ahead.
Well, thanks to Lord on this very question. And, in agreement on agriculture in the WTO, we have signed certain conditionalities, and every country, those who are signatories to that, have signed that. First, 2-3 basic facts. India agriculture had been actually net taxed. The subsidy was negative. And this is where Sharad Joshi always used to say, you are suppressing our prices, you are not allowing because there are different ways to give subsidies. One is through price support. That is, you give higher prices, which most of the Western countries do, than what the international reference price is. It is called the external reference price. The base year for which it is compared is 1986 to 88 in the WTO agreement on agriculture. So you compare your prices of today with a base year of 86 to 88. And then you say if your prices are higher, then you are giving price support to your farmers. That is one. Now, there is a big debate on that, whether the base, the reference price, 86 to 88, is legitimate anymore, especially after the price shock of 2007-8. And but all said and done, as on today, that remains. So most of the countries, OECD countries, are subsidizing their farmers to the tune of about 25% of the value of farm produce. Indian agriculture overall is still not that subsidized, but in some specific commodities, and rice is an example, the permission under that agreement on agriculture that has been given to India is that for developing countries, that you can go up to 10% of the value of that particular commodity, which is called the de minimis subsidy. In March 2020, Government of India gave the calculations to WTO. And if I may put it here on the table, first time we have crossed the de minimis level for rice. So rice, we are giving more subsidy, price support than what we are entitled to under the agreement on agriculture under WTO. But Lord is very much right that developed countries are giving much more. In fact, if you go to Japan rice is 6 to 7 times the international price, But they have agreed under agreement on agriculture in WTO. Each country from their position where they were, they are supposed to cut down the subsidies and price support. And much of the European Union has moved away from price support to income support. Same thing US is doing. So all these, because income support is less distorting than the price support. So I think India will have to perhaps willy-nilly move in that direction. I'm not saying that you cut down the support to farmers. What is not allowed to India is the export subsidy, and export subsidies were the first ones to be cut up all across because they create major distortions. So if India is going to give subsidy on sugar exports, it is going to invite problem from other exporting countries whose interest would be hurt. But overall, for food security, nutritional security, smallholders, question is, how do you give support? Is it the price support which is the best support, or is it investment in R&D, or direct income support, or linking it to better environment? In Europe, they are giving it for multifunctionality. Good in Switzerland, nice beauty, scenic beauty of the rural areas to maintain that. Each cow gets more subsidy than any farmer in India will get.
I remember there was a move that Nehru was driving for the Kaveri River. to subsidize farmers to convert their land into forest, which would help the river and would get them also more money over the long term.
So you can give it in different ways, which are less distorting and create better environment. So nobody is saying cut down the support to farmers, but use policy instruments which are better and benign to environment and water table.
Sure. Dr. Gulati, there's one more question, and then we'll take some audience questions as well. Duncan Bartlett, the editor of the Asian Affairs magazine, he had a question. If we could hear his question, please, if he could be brought up.
My name is Duncan Bartlett, and I'm the editor of Asian Affairs magazine. I have a question for Mr. Gulati about the farmers' protests. The agricultural reforms are an issue which have provoked unease not just in India, but also in the UK. And 35 members of the British Parliament have signed a letter calling on the British Foreign Secretary, Dominic Raab, to raise the issue with the Indian government. Could you give your view on this, please?
Yeah, once again, I'm not saying you have to comment on the politics of it, but I guess the UK view, what is among the general populace, which obviously impacts some of the politicians here and how they look at what's happening in India.
UK and India have very strong relations, not only economic relations, but also social bonding of the people who migrated to UK several years back. So there is an emotional connect and there is an economic connect. So if there is some problem or some, sort of not a very pleasant situation in India, there is a concern on the part of people who are connected to India very closely to express their displeasure or anguish or whatever you want to say. But when the government of UK or the political parties of UK start asking any other country, it's not UK and India, but if we start commenting, India starts commenting in other countries' affairs, each country has its own problem, and farmers are farmers. When the French farmers also come on the streets and throw tomatoes on the streets. So this is a problem in several countries. Their concern is well taken, appreciated, but I think pushing it that one country should do this or that I feel is interference in the sovereignty of that country.
To be fair, one must say the British government the government itself has actually not listened to this and has been extremely supportive and let India take its own decisions on this. If we can take some audience questions as well, Dr. Gulati. So there's one from Shashank. He says, sir, what is your suggestion to the Indian government to improve a better environment and agriculture infrastructure?
Well, I think it's a new package that is needed for those states in particular where the environmental damage is very, very intense. There are many states, but Punjab is a classic case where 80% of the blocks of Punjab literally are in red. That means the water table depletion is much faster than the recharge, and they cannot be recharged. So permanent depletion is taking place very, very fast. So I think the state leadership and the central leadership have to come together, put in resources to change the behavior and take the farmers to a higher level of income in the commodities which are demanded in the economy, or we are competitive, which we can export. So the whole system has to be changed from a supply-driven system of 60s and 70s when there were huge deficits to a demand-driven system when you are having reasonably comfortable situation on the agriculture front. So demand system, but taking care of the environmental concerns. You can no more ask for increasing productivity if your environment is depleting or your water table is going down. These two things can no more be separated. I would add one more little thing in this. if you have to look towards 2030, the policies have to be made keeping malnutrition in India into a central focus. Because India has overcome the food security concerns, but India still has a 10-year challenge ahead of it where malnutrition, every fourth person in the world, children, especially below 5 years of age, is an Indian. So we have a massive challenge in front of us, and biofortification of crops with high zinc, with high iron, with high other minerals. I think we have to find out a way how to travel from food security to nutritional security, along with environmental sustainability. So this is a challenge for Indian policy, and that's what we are advising and begging the government of India and the states in particular. I had the honor of working with a number of state leadership also, and even right now with Punjab, we are involved in some way or the other.
No, that's a fair point. And for most farmers, the land is like their mother, and you have to make sure that the mother is healthy.
Yes,
but it's not. It's and of course, and the thing on nutrition is so well taken. पहले शायद खाना नहीं मिलता था, अभी खाना मिलता है, लेकिन nutritious खाना नहीं मिलता है.
Our soils have become so deficient in zinc that the wheat and rice are deficient in zinc. And that deficiency in zinc causes stunting amongst children. Once there is stunting, they lose the earning capacity and learning capability for the rest of their life. So we have to work very intensively towards more of zinc-rich wheat and rice. In fact, very great innovations have taken place even from Punjab, from Mohali. Doctor has worked out a wheat that has 5 to 6 times more antioxidants than the normal wheat. So these innovations and more zinc and iron and other things that need to be put in staples, so that poor people who cannot afford meat and milk and to those quantities that are needed for more protein, how can we ensure biofortification at the grassroots?
That they get nutritious food. Dr. Gulati, one more question. Vinay Gulati, I'm assuming he's not a relative. How long do you think it will take for this chaos and protest to settle down? Difficult question.
I hope so. The angers at some points, but today, just a few hours back, I got the news that Supreme Court has asked the agitating farmers to have a committee with the government. Government has been continuously saying we are open for dialogue, don't take a hard line. There is always some other political elements that come in, but leaving that apart, on the content, clause by clause, where are your fears? Why those fears are? Rather than just saying repeal the laws, where is the shoe pinching? Tell us and we will correct that. So government has offered olive branch all through and is open for dialogue. I think today Supreme Court has asked both the parties to come together on a table rather than blocking the highways. It's already 13, 14 days. So, and it's getting cold. You can sit inside. Delhi's temperature yesterday night was 4.1 degrees Celsius. So it's pretty cold outside for Indians. So given that situation, I hope by tomorrow or so, the agitating farmer leaders will listen to what the Supreme Court has said. And hopefully wisdom should prevail over emotions and anger. And both parties need to, these are our farmers. We love them. And they have done a heroic job. So under no circumstances, any government can think of harming them, either reducing their income or doing anything which is not palatable. But wherever the confusion is, I think that can be sorted out. The only way in a democratic setup is to sit down and have a dialogue. That's the civilized way of bridging your differences.
Fair point. Fair point. Dr. Gulati, you've already given us more time than you had promised. If I could just impose one last question on you, sir.
Sure.
From Anirudh Rajguru, your thoughts on contract farming, and can the Indian farmers adapt to it?
They are already doing, there are many success stories of contract farming in the country. You can, even in grapes, for example, or strawberries and bananas and even McCain's potatoes. And you can imagine that Pepsi is doing contract farming in West Bengal with the smallest holders, and West Bengal over 30 years, 35 years had been dominated by, left ruling parties. So there are several examples. But now this law is trying to give a formalized shape to that, so that it is properly recorded, and if there is a dispute, then how the dispute settlement mechanism can be handled. So I feel this is a step in the right direction. There is, I think, inherent in your question whether they will have the bargaining power to, that is an unequal match, Pepsi with the smallholders. But, government has already announced the formation of 10,000 new farmer-producer organizations. And each organization, each farmer-producer company would have about 1,000 members. So that gives them, if you strengthen them, then they will have matching power. But to tell you very frankly, India is a nation of smallholders. And if the business corporates have to do any business, they have to build social capital with them. They may exploit them once, but the political backlash will be not just on one corporate, it can be on 10. So corporates are more than cautious on this front, that that type of thing. Nestle has been operating maybe for 40, 50 years in Punjab. Have you heard any major complaints that they have been exploiting the farmers? So I think it's an evolutionary process. There would be some bad apples here or there, but they can be tackled. I think bridging and building of trust over a period of time, because as I said, farm and factories cannot be separated. If you have to move to more value addition, then farmers will have to work with, raw milk. How do you take to the urban areas unless you process it? So the corporates will come and process that. Government cannot be processing everything. So all the commodities, whether from paddy to rice or wheat to wheat flour, everything has to be processed, and only then it can be consumed. So time will show, but I'm sure and I'm hopeful and optimistic that these laws have the potential to unleash major investments and give a turn for the better to Indian economy, agriculture, higher productivity, less wastages, greater efficiency, and I'm sure it will lead to better incomes of the farmers also.
Dr. Gulati, thank you so much. This is a burning topic, not just in India, but even in the UK. So many Indians are talking about this. There are heated debates, and it is such a delight to hear the universally acknowledged India's foremost agricultural economist to come on our stage and to clarify issues for our viewers. Thank you so much, Dr. Gulati. Thank you so much for all that you do for India. And thank you so much for gracing the stage of the Nehru Center.
Thank you very much for having me on your show, and my best wishes to our farmers who are at present protesting, and good luck to our government. Hopefully they will come together and resolve. And thanks to your audience and listeners. I hope I've contributed to sense of my knowledge, whatever I have. Thank you.
You certainly have, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.